Most children with special education needs have problems linked to executive functioning, the mental process that helps us to plan, focus, attend, remember instructions, and juggle multiple tasks. And they are more likely to be delayed in reaching emotional maturity. If we want to learn how to switch off the amygdala, we might need to train the brain to use different mechanisms that need to be restored in our long-term memory. Only then will we be able to access it automatically without too much thought. So this is why this workbook is a 14-day program. We want to move these strategies to the child's long-term programming. We want them to be able to access them in their long-term part of their brain.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Sue Larkey podcast. As I always say, you have to embrace difference to make a difference. Let's dive into today's podcast.
Do you know children who get angry at the smallest thing? Something goes wrong, they make a mistake, they lose, or, they just won't even try things. They have a fear of trying new things. Do you know some children who get angry and get fight? Or do you know children who go quiet? Anger can look different for everybody. And I think it's really important we educate children both about their anger and other people's anger. But when I'm looking to increase a child's engagement and participation, the number one thing I need to look at is, can they manage their own emotions? Because in a busy, complex classroom with 30 students, children need to be able to regulate their own emotions, but also if somebody else gets emotional, know what to do in that situation. Because some of my children actually pick up on other people's emotions, and that isn't talked about enough, that double empathy, and that can cause a lot of confusion too for our children. So my passion is to help children have what I call emotional literacy. See, you could come to my workshops, put in place lots of proactive strategies, your timers, your now, next, later, real choices, all the things I talk about. But at the end of the day, even if you've got those things in place, if the smallest thing goes wrong or a child makes a mistake and they go 0 to 100, whether it's a shutdown or a meltdown, guess what? They're going to disengage in learning. So I like to call it 50-50 behaviour plans. 50% what I need to do, what I can do in the environment, the proactive things I can put in place, and 50% what the child needs to do. They need to use the tools I'm giving them. And one of those tools is children being able to understand and manage their own emotions. I call it emotional literacy. If you subscribe to the podcast, you're going to hear me talk about this a lot over the next few weeks, because I've been looking at feedback from my workshops, frequently asked questions. I've been really doing a deep dive and review into feedback and trying to understand what you want. And what I'm finding, everybody's questions around behaviour. But then when I do a deeper dive into, well, what do you mean by behaviour? Actually, a lot of you have got in place great strategies. Like I go, wow, because I always say, what have you already got in place? So those of you who've done my live virtual workshop, I do a question collection and I ask, what's your biggest challenge? What have you already tried? Because what you've tried tells me what to do next. But people rarely say, I've actually helped the child understand and manage their own emotions. I've put in place books like the Red Beast Anger Workbook. I've read books on emotions, I've done a whole feelings, getting children to understand the stages. So as a result, for many of my children, their emotions come on from nowhere. They're sitting there and suddenly, boom, One of my favorite sayings is, never in the history of calming down has anyone ever calmed down. But so many of my children once they've hit the meltdown, it's game over. You've all heard me talk about this. Once your child is at the third phase of a meltdown or a shutdown, nothing works. We need to get in earlier. But you can have the best de-escalation strategies. You could send the kid out for a walk, but unless they know how to use that movement to regulate, they're going to just keep saying dysregulated. So over the next few weeks, I am going to be talking a lot about helping children understand and manage their emotions. So If you subscribe to the podcast, obviously these will drop straight in when you hear them. If you're listening to this later or coming back to these episodes, or you've seen that this was called How to Help a Child Manage Anger or something in the podcast and it's pricked your attention, then I highly recommend you listen to a few of these episodes, because I feel like a lot of the information is going to build on each other. And as always, please sign up to my e-newsletter, because I'm going to be sending out lots of written information, break cards, lots of things to actually support you and the children you know over the next few weeks, because I want to do a big focus on helping children manage anger, anxiety, their emotions, but mainly looking at how do we help children recognize and regulate their emotions. If you want to create a calm classroom, which is my passion, you need to manage behaviour. But I believe I go into too many schools and it's about the teacher managing the child's behaviour. Actually, children need to manage their own behaviour. They need to self-regulate. And the way to self-regulate is to teach children to recognise their emotions. As you will hear me talk in future podcasts or might have heard me before, I call it emotional literacy. We teach reading by reading to children, children reading to us, by surrounding children with text, by immersing children in language, by doing both oral and written language. Well, emotions are like that. You need to teach emotional literacy. You need to teach children both to like word recognition, emotional recognition. We need to talk out loud about our emotions. You need to say, I was angry on the weekend. I am angry now. You need to actually notice your own emotions. In fact, I would like you, if you have a moment today, to write down every emotion you have felt, maybe in 1 hour of the day, every emotion. Or from when you woke up this morning. Did you wake up tired? How did you regulate that? Were you the sort of person that regulates that by hitting the snooze button? So giving yourself another 5-10 minutes time out? Is that the child that needs the 10 minutes in the calm tent? Another 10 minutes calming? So are you a snoozer? Or are you a coffee? Oh, I need to go and get some coffee in my system or some water. So does this child need some interoception? Do they need some internal? Do they need a drink? Or are you the sort of person that jumps out of bed and goes straight to the toilet and then you feel more better? Yeah, well, maybe this child needs a toilet break. Or are you the sort of person that likes to get up and do some yoga? Well, maybe this child does need some calm yoga. Or do you have a playlist you listen to in the car or when you first wake up in the morning? Some people have an alarm that music comes on. Does this child need to listen to some music? Or are you the sort of person that wakes up and when you're a bit tired, you start scrolling on your social media? Does this child need some iPad time in the morning? Do they need some phone time? I can't personally believe I'm saying that. I cannot believe I'm encouraging you to give a child screen time in the morning. But maybe they need it, because some days I do. Some mornings, straight for the coffee. Some mornings, playlist. Some mornings, I get on my social media. On the weekend, I often like to watch a show on Saturday morning because I don't get to watch a lot of shows during the week. Yes? So sometimes I just like to watch one episode of one of my favourite shows. So how do you regulate? Have I mentioned something you do? Have I missed something you do? Well, does this child have a toolbox to help them manage their emotions? Some of my children do not, or they only have one tool in their toolbox. Those of you who have done the Tony Attwood course, he talks about it like a toolbox, and I love that. Like some things need a hammer, some need a screwdriver. What does this child need to manage their emotions? And this is where I want you to dive into over the next few weeks with me. But also, I want you to notice your own emotions, and I want you to talk out loud about your emotions. So, Kay Algani, who has written the Red Beast, the Panicosaurus, all of those beautiful picture books that every school should own. And I'm such a big fan of Kay's books that some of you will know I have now co-authored a book with her because I made a connection and virtual friendship over loving her books and being, connecting with her online and then becoming virtual friends, and then we have been, she's just come on the podcast a few times, and we just connected, and very similar outlook and thinking. And as you know, I always love to co-author books with parents of children on the spectrum, and her son Hatham, who has autism, has done all the illustrations for all her books and our book, the Red Beast Anger Workbook. So if you don't own any of these books, I highly recommend you go and get some of these amazing picture books, because what Kay and Hatham do, they make emotions visual. And at the moment, emotions are invisible. So if you had a child who has trouble with interoception, knowing they need the toilet, drink, food, then get Yuki. It's a beautiful book. If you have a child who panics and anxious, get the Panicosaurus. If you have a child with ADHD, get Winston the Wallaby, because what Hatham brings, his lived experience, is how to make these emotions visible by using these beautiful illustrations that show children, oh, this is what it feels like. And in the Red Beast Workbook, what I love is Hatham has done, and how amazing, if you have the pictures, he's talked about how anger can be like a light switch, flicking it on, boom, the light goes on. Or it can be more like a dimmer, where it slowly comes on, yes? So giving the children this, your anger is like, boom, a light going on. Or is it like the dim switch? And what we need to do is help children to put that dimmer on to help them actually manage their emotions. And in this book, Danny talks us through the ways he learns to calm his red beast. And Hatham has drawn these beautiful illustrations that go with, what you can do to calm your red beast. You might do a breathing and count slowly activity. You might go for a run. You might do some exercises, listening to music. You might read a book. You might do some arts and crafts. You might have a drink and a snack. You might play on your computer. You might stroke your pet. Make sure you have a look at that picture. It is so adorable, the way Hatham has the hand patting the cat. You might watch TV or YouTube. All those things that I mentioned that many of you might do to wake up. I have to laugh because I have, as you know, I don't pre-script these podcasts. I just sit down and chat to you like if we were sitting down with the book. I literally just turned to that page, and I didn't realize I was going to say all of those in the introduction, but I literally talked about all of those. I think I didn't talk about reading a book, but that is one I do, absolutely. I find if I read a book now before and I go to sleep and when I wake up in the morning, even if it's 2 pages, I can't believe how good reading can be, really. So anyway, that's just me. It's not for everyone. Anyway, in the book, though, one of the things, I just want to read you the intro. I'm not great at reading out loud. Like lots of you, I think I have a little bit of just that. I'm always standing in my year 9 English class trying to read out loud with all those eyes on me. So bear with me. I'm going to practice. I've shared my emotions. Did you hear that? I just shared with you. I get a bit anxious reading out loud. I'd love you to share your emotions with your children this week, parents. I think sharing our emotions helps children understand. So many of my children think we've got it sorted. They don't realize that we get anxious reading out loud. So I'm like, well, what can I do? Well, you know what? I'm going to take a little sip of my water here. I'm going to take a deep breath. Can you model that this week for a child? Can you model that? Take a drink, have a deep breath. It's often more than one strategy we need to calm. In my experience, sometimes I need a few things. So there's an introduction to the book for adults, and I think it really explains why I think this Red Beast Workbook is a must-have for all families and home. Emotional flooding is an outpouring of fear and anxiety that can lead to anger, aggression, or total shutdown if we don't understand how to deal with it. This is just me putting in a foot. We personally don't know how to deal with it. Many of you are seeing anger, anxiety, aggression, and you can put in 1,000 strategies, but until the child understands what's happening in their body, until they recognize it, it's a little bit like toilet training. Children don't just go from nappies to weeing in the toilet, really. It takes time for children to regulate. And do they still have accidents? Of course they do. Well, guess what? When we're teaching children about their emotions, this is why we're saying you need 14 days. When I do toilet training, I say a week, no nappies. It's the same thing. I nearly need you to let children feel their emotions. Too many people leave a nappy on instead of letting the children actually feel being wet and seeing that water run down their legs. They're not going to learn to toilet train if they have a nappy on because they're not actually feeling what happens without a nappy. We need to let children feel their emotions. And you need to show them your emotions too. When I'm toilet training children, I say, take them to the toilet with you. Do they actually know what you're doing in there? Not teachers, but parents. You need to take the child. You need to expect them to come in for a week before you take off the nappy, take them in. A week before you do this anger workbook, spend a week talking about your emotions, going, I can't open this can. It's making me angry. My remote control's not working. The batteries have died. It's making me frustrated, or whatever emotion. I want you to talk through your emotions. I want you to model your emotions like I just did. I feel a bit anxious reading out loud. It makes me feel like everyone's looking at me. Share your emotions. Go around the whole class and ask children, same event, different emotions. Get children to share. Do a survey of emotions. How do you feel when you come back from play? How did you feel about that activity? Talk about feelings. Okay, back to reading out the introduction. It is often termed a meltdown, but it is really an involuntary coping mechanism. The words involuntary and coping will be crucial to our understanding of how to respond to them. The term meltdown refers to the process of melting metal. It helps to think of a meltdown quite literally as a melting pan. The contents have boiled dry and everything that was once solid begins to lose shape and takes on a new and now dangerous form. Can we turn off the heat before the molten metal overflows and causes more damage or harm? Can we become more vigilant and prevent it from happening so frequently? Imagine a child with special needs being overwhelmed by sensory overload, by the constraints and demands of others, and by their expectations. Powerful emotions will bubble up and spill out as fear and anger. This is the experience of emotional flooding, and safely supporting a meltdown can be frightening and always difficult. Yet, as adults, we realize that it is our responsibility to recognize them, understand them, and try to become a safe container for these uncontrollable emotions. It is not just the child who needs coping mechanisms, but the parents, grandparents, brothers, sisters, aunties, cousins, teachers, support assistants, and anyone who cares for or works with children who simply cannot yet self-regulate these powerful feelings. I love this introduction. I think Kay and I went back and forth on this, 100 times, and then our editors looked at it. I just think it's so important. Okay, back to this. Sorry, I was getting a bit emotional reading it because I think it's so important. And so many people just see the meltdown and judge it, or see an aggression and judge it. And I always say children aren't aggressions for no reason. Children don't have a shutdown or meltdown for no reason. You don't always know why. In fact, sometimes you'll never know why. But if you teach the children about their emotions, they will start to know why. They will start to get understand their anxiety, anger. I'm 55 and I still get angry and upset. I still get anxious. I still worry. None of us stop doing that. It's called being human. But we need to teach children to notice and manage those emotions. Anyway, that was just another footlight. I do go off track, our project. But anyway, back to the introduction. What is happening in the brain during a meltdown is critical to our understanding of it. It is termed an amygdala hijack and happens when we react to the psychological stress as if we are in physical danger. The amygdala is one of two almond-shaped structures or nuclei found deep in the temporal lobe of the brain. Amongst other functions, it is responsible for the fight or flight mechanism. If the amygdala senses danger, it will suddenly trigger an intense, unconscious emotional response that effectively switches off the thinking brain, the neurocortex. Once activated, freeze, fluster, flop. See what wake up the red beast. So I have in the book, this is what the red beast is. This is what happens. The 5 Fs: fight, flight, freeze, fluster, flop. And in the book, I love the way, again, Haytham has done the pictures for those 5 Fs. I mean, if you haven't seen the book, make sure you have a look on the website. I mean, I love Haytham's illustrations, but the way he does the 5 Fs are just fantastic. I mean, I'll try and put it in the podcast for you to have a look, a visual of it. I'm just trying to flick to the page, as always when you're trying to find a page, but it really is beautiful the way that he has drawn those 5 Fs. The other one, there's just so many good pictures in here. But anyway, here it is. So the way he's done the freeze, flight, this like running, the fight with the punching, the teeth clenching, it's just, you got to have a look. You got to have a look. Anyway, what happens next is a cascade of visceral responses, starting with the release of adrenaline, leading to increased heart rate, blood pressure, and breathing, followed by shaking, sweating, and possible nausea or stomach problems. Stress hormones, like cortisol, make it impossible to concentrate or problem solve. The toll it takes on the child is significant and may have several hours before a sense of equilibrium is restored. Children who develop better impulse control will do better at school and life in general. Most children with special education needs have problems linked to executive functioning, the mental process that helps us to plan, focus, attend, remember instructions, and juggle multiple tasks. And they are more likely to be delayed in reaching emotional maturity. If we want to learn how to switch off the amygdala, we might need to train the brain to use different mechanisms that need to be stored in our long-term memory. Only then will we be able to access it automatically without too much thought. So this is why this workbook is a 14-day program. We want to move these strategies to the child's long-term programming. We want them to be able to access them in their long-term part of their brain. That the executive functioning skills, and executive functioning's like a muscle. You don't just go to the gym once and learn how to lift a weight. You have to lift it every day. In fact, I encourage you, get down now, do some sit-ups. How many can you do? Well, tomorrow you can probably do one more and one more. You can't just go hard. So if we want this child to build those skills, we have to do it over 14 days. And that's why this program is designed over 14 days. Parents, you can do it at home over 14 days. Why don't you do it with your child? Why don't you do the workbook together? Teachers, you can have a group of children taken out who all need help, and there might be a range of ages. Remember, emotional regulation, it's like the gym. You sort of got to do an assessment and put people together in a class. Just because you're the same age doesn't mean you can do the same number of sit-ups. Just because the child's the same age doesn't mean they have the same access to emotional regulation and executive functioning. Okay, so this workbook is aimed at doing just that. It isn't going to be a quick fix. It will be formative and illuminating journey towards understanding and self-control. While you can be too young to embark on this journey, the brain can't do what it's not ready to develop to do yet. You can never be too old. We invite you to join Danny as he starts his journey towards understanding and regulating his anger. But please, just a side note, remember anger can be freeze, fight, flight, and all of those things, okay? So I highly recommend, if you haven't had a look at the book, you have a look at the book. I just want to talk you through the sorts of things you're going to see in the book. First of all, Danny's going to learn about, he's going to introduce you to different family members and how they see anger. So we have, I'm just going to flick to that page. We have Mr. Parker, his teacher, who does the light switch and the dimmer. We have Grandma, who explains that, Dad, who talks about anger that can surprise you. We have Grandma, who says that anger can, what does Grandma says, we all get angry from time to time because we can't choose our feelings, but we can choose what we do about them. Isn't that beautiful? She says it's okay to be angry, but it's not okay to hurt people, say a million things, or destroy property. Anyway, and then we have Mum, and then Danny learns about controlling his anger, what wakes up people's red beasts, and his Uncle Charlie says they're called triggers. And we talk about the amygdala and the freeze, flee, flight, fluster, and flock, and do have a look at those pictures. And then we talk about what does anger feel like in our body, because everyone feels different. And so we have the picture of the body. And then we talk about what wakes up the red beast. Now, these actually come from my Facebook community. So I asked in my Facebook community, which I hope you're part of. We have over 130,000 like-minded people. And I listed 18 things that came from the community. Things from loud noises to things not going as planned, to losing a game, having to wait, being hungry, technology not working, and then you can add to the list. And then we have, I love this. Oh my goodness, I should do a video of this. Kate does this fabulous activity she's done because she's a special education teacher about the power of words and how saying horrible things to people and mean words can hurt, but also some words heal. So my grandma told me that words can hurt or heal. I found this difficult to understand, so she took me into the kitchen to explain. Grandma helped me to understand what she meant about words hurting or healing. We need a sieve, some icing sugar, and some baking beans. Grandma explained that a sieve helps us filter things like flour, our icing sugar. Our brain is a bit like a sieve. It helps us to filter our thoughts. She said to think of icing sugar as kind, gentle, nice, thoughtful, or sweet words. We can use these words without thinking too much because everyone loves a kind word. The baking beans are hard and mean and unkind and thoughtless words. We should try to keep these words from spilling out of our mouths because they really hurt people's feelings and can make them feel bad, sad, or mad. Grandma said we must think about the power of words because cruel words can harm or hurt people. So we then in the discussion ask you to think of times that you might have hurt someone's feelings with mean words. And I just love the idea of the baking sugar and the baking beans and the icing sugar and the sieve. I'd love you to do that with the children. If you all work in a specialist classroom, I'd definitely get those visual activities out and do them with the children. Grandma said sweet words are like giving someone a present, a box of chocolates, a piece of cake, an ice cream sundae, a fireworks display, or a cute kitten. And you should see, again, Haytham's pictures are just beautiful. And then what other things would people like as a gift? Grandma told me that saying horrible, mean, unkind, cruel, or thoughtless words can hurt people. They are like giving them a really bad smell. And there's a picture of a sock. It's adorable. A loud noise that hurts your ears. A sore toe. Horrible tasting medicine. Discussion. Can you think of some more horrible things that people wouldn't like to get? Okay, so these are the sorts of things that I love about this book because Haytham has made, and Kay, through her experience, both as a teacher and a mother, she has made the anger and anxiety and all of these things visible. And like, for example, with the sensory, she uses like and these are Kay's activities. That's why I'm saying she, but I suppose we, because we both then adapted it. But sensory, you have to think of it like the Goldilocks and the Three Bears, like the bowls. Like sometimes it's too small, some's just right, and some are too big. So, for example, jumping on the trampoline, how much is too much? Remember, children become overstimulated and some isn't enough till it's too small. But then there's just right. And Hatham has drawn, what are the size of your sensory bowls on page 98? And it's got that. So it's helping children understand. They might be oversensitive or undersensitive and getting them to work out what their just right is. But making it visual, using those bowls to make it visual so children understand. So I just love this book. If you haven't got the Red Beast Workbook or the Red Beast Picture Book, put them on your must-have books. I think they'll be invaluable. And I know lots of you have the old Red Beast Picture Book. Remember, it's been revised and updated to make it more inclusive. I mean, it's still one of my absolute favourite books for helping all children. I mean, I like to read it to the whole class and talk to the whole class. And I think the Red Beast Workbook is the perfect companion guide for you to have with the Red Beast. So hope that this helps. Remember, talk about your emotions, talk about how you fix them up. When a child can't read a word, we don't just go point to the word and expect them to work it out. We give them strategies to work out the words. So let's work on emotional literacy. To create calm classrooms, we need children to recognise and manage their own emotions. My guess is you're already putting a lot of good strategies in place. That is the child accessing those strategies. Best of luck. Please send me any questions. I love hearing from you. And can you do me a favour? If you know anybody who maybe needs help with a child getting angry, share this episode. So many people don't find my podcast or don't know about it. And when they do, I normally get an email going, I wish I'd known about this earlier. My friend shared an episode and I'm listening to all the back episodes. So please make sure you share. The more we share, the more we can support. I would love you to be my ambassadors for making a difference. Because remember, if we embrace difference, we can make a difference. But it takes a community to raise a neurodiverse child. And I thank you for being part of my community. And I would love you to share with others so that we can build this community and make a bigger difference.
I hope you've got some great tips and strategies to make a difference. Remember, strategies wear out and not every strategy works for everybody. If you're ready to dive in deeper to more strategies and ideas to make a difference, I'd highly recommend you consider Dr. Tony Attwood or my online courses. For more information, visit my website www.sulaki.com.au.